So it should be recording. So this is our first study group as a cohort and everything. I know not everyone is able to attend, so awesome. Thank you all for who were able to attend and stuff like this. Know that basically some quick etiquette kind of stuff that you typically will do for study groups and really just joining anything is if you can enter, just make sure you mute yourself unless you have something talking, just because there's sometimes someone's computer is like whistling or something like that, or some background that totally happens. I usually try to, if I'm not talking, I'll try to mute myself. That way, it doesn't interrupt and everything like that. And of course, if you have questions and stuff like that, feel free to unmute yourself. It's a little bit different in remote versus a real, a physical classroom that we're all sitting together. So some general kind of things that really help and I find smooth is that one, for me, if you kind of raise your hand, something like that, I might miss it. I tend to right now my screen is all of you guys. So I can see everyone and see everything's going on and stuff like that. So I guess I can see you sleeping over there, but no, but it's really helpful. It's just if you do raise your hand, I might not see it, I do see everyone. So, feel free to just unmute yourself, especially something about to move on to the next topic or something like that. Don't feel like you're interrupting or whatnot. You can also, send it in the Zoom chat too, if you just kind of want to send them, put a message there. I usually take a second to look it up, it flashes for me and everything. But if for some reason I do miss that too, feel free to say, hey, someone had a question or I had a question and whatnot. Okay, sound pretty good? Cool. Yeah, and just do head nods, thumbs up, right? One thing that, just to kind of help build community around, also just kind of Zoom etiquette is if you can have your video on, awesome. If for some reason, sometimes people have weird things happening with their, camera or Zoom's not connecting, totally fine. To be quite honest, I'm probably not going to call you out on it, saying, oh, so-and-so doesn't have their video on. But just kind of a nice thing to do. So it kind of gets us to versus just me talking to, if we were all blank screens, I just feel like I'd be all alone talking to myself. So it really helps kind of just build that community part in there. One thing I will say, because I have seen students do it, if you are driving and you are trying to attend the Zoom meeting, don't join. I'll record it. I don't want you guys to get in an accident. I don't want you guys to be unsafe just to try to meet up in the study group and stuff like that. So I have some students do that before, and I'll call them out because I'm why are you driving, listening to this and everything? I'd rather you be safe than attend an hour-long study group that will be recorded. Seems a good trade-off. All right. Cool. So I think we have a good, decent amount of people. We have a cohort. I believe now it is a size of 23 students. So I know not all 23 are here, but yeah, pretty decently sized. So one thing to kind of help figure a little bit of timing and scheduling. I know 5 p.m. Eastern time is not the best time for everyone. Obviously you guys were able to make this. Thank you guys for being able to make it. But sometimes things come up. So I did put out a survey link today. And so if you haven't done it yet, please use that survey from this, it's the About Me survey. In there will also be availability time. I will say is that I made a mistake. It's totally my bad. If you filled out that survey and you're I didn't see a time say oh, what time available are you on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? I might have already messaged you directly. But if you don't remember seeing that, it's because I made a mistake and I removed it. So there's a new survey in there. So I would ask that if you haven't already, take the survey again. I mean, who doesn't like surveys, right? Takes all the time in the world. But no, and I know, I think I want to shout out, I think it was Johnny that helped me out. Yeah, he took the survey, what, 3 times, 4 times, something like that?
Just 3.
Yeah, 3. Okay, good. He was my unit tester. He was testing, making sure everything worked out fine. So thank you, Johnny, for sure, making that, helping me out there, whether you meant to or not. But cool. All right, so let's kind of get into this a little bit. So let me pull up, I know you guys can't see my screen right now. I'm gonna pull up my little agenda because I want to make sure I don't forget anything. So this is technically, our study groups on section 00. I think you can see in the calendar event, and actually says section 00 in section 01. Typically we'll have 1 study group per section. Right. And basically the idea is, I mentioned this on orientation, is that if you can come in already gone through the section, awesome, amazing. That's the best ideal. It's kind of like reading the chapter before you go into class, right? However, if you don't, especially being part-time, you guys have other obligations and stuff I totally understand. So if you don't get through that section, I would say like at the very least kind of like breeze through it, like, you know, kind of just check it out, just see what's in there. And I'll kind of gear the study group towards like if you haven't quite made it, that way you can kind of go to the study group, you know, possibly watch the recording and then go into the material or deep into the material. And what I try to do is I really try to emphasize what the main points of the section, you know, or things that I find very important. However, there are times I just can't get through the whole stuff. In fact, most of the time I can't get through everything. So just kind of be aware of that, is that the study groups are there to supplement. They're not to replace, you know, going through the curriculum. And I would say, you know, maybe this is me being more biased towards myself because I am here to do stuff. I would say the curriculum doesn't completely replace, you know, going to study groups too. So sometimes I've had people too, it's like, oh, I don't really need to go to study group because I already went through all the material. I don't have any questions. You might learn something new. Sometimes we go over stuff and all those things, we can practice things out. So really, I like to say the biggest thing you can do is putting that effort in there. The more effort you put in, the more you're going to get out. And I'm sure you guys have heard this all a bit. Okay. Yeah. And feel free, you know, like if you have to head out for a second, I saw Nadine just put that on the thing. If you guys have to leave, don't worry about it. You don't feel like it's like, oh no, you know, like I'm like, they're just gonna like yell at me or something like that. Totally happens. And plus sometimes internet goes out. All right. So I'm going to go ahead. Today's going to be a little bit interesting because we're not going to go over a very particular section, but I'm going to kind of navigate the overall stuff that basically I mentioned in orientation, but maybe not went into full detail and all that stuff. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen, and you guys will learn from me that it always takes me an extra like few minutes, just not a few minutes, a few seconds to share my screen. Okay, so let me go ahead and share. Okay, cool. So you guys should all see Google here. Cool, and you see learn.co. Just give me a thumbs up if you guys see that. It's loading. Okay, cool, awesome. So let me go ahead and move over. Sorry, I know you guys can't see this, but I have so many windows up right now. Like I'm just making sure everything looks good. And plus you guys are relatively large cohort, even with only like half the students here. So I want to make sure I can see you guys all, see all of you. All right. So cool. So the first thing, now I'm just going to give up on moving these windows to see everyone. Okay, so I have a little agenda here. So the first thing I want to show you is just Learn in general. So I think at this point, most people have kind of navigated through Learn, but I want to point out a few things that might be helpful. So one is that we should be, when you have a new module and stuff like this, so we're on module 1 right now. When we have module 2, I think you guys all should have been able to get to this point, but if you click switch materials, that's when you'll be able to switch. Obviously this right here, you can see this is because I have a bunch of other cohorts and instructor. You won't have nearly as long of a list ever, but this is how you would switch our, what we call the tracks. And so if we have a new module, you'd switch over to module 2 and stuff like this, or other parts like that. So just know that's how you can switch around. Oops, see, I did something I wasn't supposed to. There we go. Let's go to, sorry. I didn't even know I could do that. All right, new thing. All right, so when you go to learn.co, you should see this page. You'll see basically what lesson you're on. You can see basically other people's progress, as well as other people. I'm sure you guys have kind of explored it. I'll let you guys explore and everything. You can see some extra information about the Slack community. You might have something about like, you know, past due. These things by themselves, don't worry about too much because it's going to be the calendar itself. And then you can also see study groups that you reserve, everything like that. So you can see, like, for example, I have a couple here, as well as study groups that maybe that you haven't reserved, or maybe if they're for another cohort. So you'll kind of see that summary, right? And then you can see a little bit of tracking your stuff and everything. Here you can see I'm a very bad student. I've not been, you know, doing my stuff as I'm supposed to. But, you know, you guys will have a much better streak and things like that. And then you can see right here is the calendar. So just give me a quick thumbs up. Who's already seen this calendar or knows it's like, oh yes, I know this calendar exists. Cool. If you did not, this is a mind-blowing part. This is where basically we put all the information about, you know, our cohorts. Like this is our specific cohort calendar. And you can see here we have our study group here. Note that this is in Eastern time. So I know, like, for example, I'm Pacific time, but it's going to be Eastern time on this calendar just because that's the only way for me to be able to embed this in here. And you can see is that we have our different projects, our modules. So you can go all the way through this and check it out and see what things are. I think you can even add this to your own calendar itself. So, and I think then you can like subscribe to it, update. You guys probably know how to do this. Okay, so then if you go further down here, You'll see there's a whole bunch of information, including links. So one is the About Me survey. This should be updated to that new survey if you haven't taken it yet. So you can either go on Slack, go here, take that survey. At the end of the module, I'll usually point to you guys to this end of module feedback survey. So just kind of know that this is here. This is where usually I can point you guys some resources as well as other links. And then I want to show you a couple of resources that we'll use especially for this cohort. So one is that I actually have this repo I use for basically writing lessons and stuff like this. So there are other Jupyter notebooks that you could take. It's on GitHub, so you can actually click on this guy right here. I've already seen a couple people fork this and stuff. And this is basically, I try to keep all this relevant information. Note that I have version 2.0. We are in version 2.1. You guys are my first cohort in version 2.1. So some of the stuff I get to learn with you guys too to make sure I'm teaching you the right stuff. So, but anyway, I try to organize it by topic and stuff like this. So I might add more and more stuff into here. If you do fork it, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit today, like what that looks like. It's more of the section 2, but we'll talk about it. If you do fork it, which people have in the past, note that you will only get the least or the version of that point right then and there. So if I make updates to it, you're going to have to basically resync your fork to make sure you're up to date. So just kind of be aware of that stuff, especially if we do a study group, I show you where to find this stuff. You look back to your fork and you're like, hey, it's not there. It's probably because we've updated it or I've updated it. Okay. So I'll point to you guys here and then you can find different notebooks and such. So that's our big resource, I'd say, specifically for this cohort and stuff, cohort and everything. Then there's the student resources spreadsheet. Give me a thumbs up. Has anyone seen the student resources spreadsheet yet? I see a thumbs up there. Most people, is this like all new information here? Okay, so has anyone seen this spreadsheet I'm showing right here? Oh, I see some thumbs up, some head shakes. Okay, good. So I'm seeing some head shakes, which is perfect. So again, on this resources, the student resources spreadsheet is that basically we put all the information, or not all information, but we put a bunch of the recordings and stuff like this from myself and other instructors from other cohorts. So you can see here, it's kind of organized into these different sections. Note that we will tend to be in study groups version 2.1, and you'll notice that there's only me who's put this in here right now. I'm sure this will fill up as we go through time and everything like that. But recordings stuff specifically for 2.1 should be living here. However, I will give you guys a secret, is that version 2 and version 1, a lot of the material is very similar, if not exactly the same. They're just in different orders and stuff. So I would suggest if you want to check out, it's like, hey, I want to see if there's any other recordings or maybe some information that people have done on this section or this topic. Check out version 2.1, which is this guy right here. But if you can't, if you don't see it on here, for example, like, oh, there's nothing about, bash scripts and stuff like this. Maybe it's like, okay, let me check version 2, version 1, and just search for the title, which should be basically cluing you in. Note that this module and section, since they're on from an older version, those won't match up with your current curriculum. So just kind of, essentially, if you're going through this, ignore this module and section for version 2 and version 1, and you can go through here. And then you can see there's some few other tabs. So this is only editable by the instructors. So we try to add things in here that we find are useful, that you might come across and everything like that. So one of the things is success recipes, which I think one of our instructors, Eli, really does a great job. So he actually creates these Google Drive docs of different sections and stuff like this, of like resources and cheat sheets and stuff like this. So that's one of his things that he does a really great job doing. So you can see this is something that, it's not me. I'm not, not your main instructor and everything like that, but some great resources. Then you can see on the side here some screencasts. Sometimes we actually have maybe, I'm actually not sure specifically what this is. So you guys can check out, the different links and stuff like this. But then we also have things like peer-to-peer, which I think some of the students, sorry, this is now an instructor right here who was a student, but might actually have student-led little sessions and stuff like that. And they might, make recordings and we might put them up here as instructors. Also, we have additional topics. This tends to be a little bit small. It's actually kind of a little bit on the older side, but you can see some really interesting ones. For example, reinforcement learning, which is something that we don't necessarily go through on the curriculum, but it might be interesting. This is one of our instructors, Matt, who did this, and it's a really great one that he kind of like showed a little bit of like what reinforcement learning. To be quite honest, it's a little more advanced than what we're ready for right now, but you can check out these extra topics. And then we also will be having guest speakers. So right now we only have a couple recordings on here. This is partly because sometimes when we have guest speakers, they ask not to be recorded. Maybe they're kind of giving information, or there's stuff that they just don't want to be out there recorded kind of deal. So I will tell you is that if we do have a guest speaker, if you can at all possible, try to attend those, guest speakers, because they usually get some really great information and really insight of like being a data scientist or data related role. But it may or may not be recorded. And to be honest, sometimes recordings do weird things and doesn't get recorded. So if you can see, if there's a guest speaker coming up, try to attend it. Otherwise, see if you can get the recording up here. One thing I will say is that I'll put this on Slack is that we do have a guest speaker coming up. I'm trying to remember exactly when it is. I think it's sometime in February. Maybe it's next week, but that's actually one of our past instructors, Pablo. And so I'll make sure to share with you guys on Slack that thing too. And then you can see also README and lab walkthrough. So this is actually a newer thing that we're kind of putting together. So one thing that we're kind of doing is when you guys go through labs and stuff, we're doing the code, sometimes you can get stuck and it's just nice to see someone else do it. We're trying to put together a little bit of some material for those sections. So yeah, I believe this, these sections here are related to, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure these are actually for version 2.1. So this sheet should get longer and longer and bigger as we get more instructors kind of walking through labs and kind of showing you how we approach it and kind of essentially implementing it, you can kind of watch it through. And these are those videos I would say, if you just want to get a gist of it, you could probably speed through it, like do like 2x speed on YouTube and kind of watch people do it. That's how I watch videos sometimes. But anyway, a great resource spreadsheet. And you'll see me add the resources here as well, like as we recording. So like this recording will probably be on the spreadsheet eventually. But if you want the very specific stuff, and honestly, sometimes I take a little time to get these things updated. The easiest way to do this is actually through our, what's it called? Our cohort playlist. So I have the study group recordings here, and you actually notice this is relatively recent. So if you haven't checked this until, like if you haven't checked this today, this one exists before. So I have a playlist here, and what I do, I try to break it up by module. So as we have different modules, I'll just make a playlist that's specific to our cohort recordings. And so you can see here is that if I go to this playlist, you can actually see we have orientation here. We also have, this is something that wasn't a study group, but I added a little extra. I mentioned it today in Slack, basically how to copy a GitHub repo without forking. And then I'll add basically this recording right now, so matter right now. I'll add this onto this playlist as well. And that way you can very easily find the playlist. Like if you miss a study group or something, you can find it quicker. Okay, cool. Any questions? I'm kind of going through a whole bunch because I want to make sure I get through everything I can just to kind of help you guys out. But do you guys have any questions so far about resources, Learn Co homepage? Cool, awesome. All right, I'll take your silence as being yes. All right, and this always helps like visually. Like if you give me a thumbs up, that's a lot easier for me to see than like head nods, just for the record. All right, cool. So let's see, I went through calendar, some links. There are also some extra information. I'm not going to go through all of it, but basically notice some other videos. This can be either from other instructors or outside, what's it called? Like just other videos and resources that I find useful. I might update it on here. And then we have our contact info. So one-on-ones with Dara. Quick thumbs up. Who's already signed up for a one-on-one with Dara? A check-in. All right, I see Mercedes. Thumbs up. No one else? Shame on you all. Shame on you all. No, you really should. Dara is amazing. This is one of those things that I have students like will put it off for the longest time, and then they have it with Dara, and they're like, oh, well, that was really good. Like I should have done this earlier. So definitely do that. That's how you can sign up. You can do one-on-ones with me. However, we're going to hold that off because it won't just be with me. It might also be with Eli. So we'll talk about where this what that looks like and stuff like that. So you might have a one-on-one with not just myself, but also with Eli or something like that. It might switch off, but this will get updated as well. And then when we get into module project assessment, so about 6 weeks from now, we'll actually have our first project. 6 weeks sounds like a long time, but it's going to happen really quickly. You can sign up for an assessment, and your one-on-ones, instead of having a one-on-one for a week, you would instead have a project assessment with an instructor. And so this is where you would sign up for this date. As of right now, if you click on it, you will find there's no dates available because you guys don't have to worry about assessments. So not yet, at least. Okay, so don't worry about this. And then student services email. So this is where I put this specifically on here because sometimes they're saying like, if you guys ask like, oh, like there's some financial stuff that you need to ask, or, like, oh, there's something I wanted to ask about more, like the logistics or administration stuff, feel free to message me. But sometimes you might have better luck with student services. In fact, I might say, oh, let me go ahead and ping them on student services and go ahead and write this email. This is where you can find this email here. I just put it here because it's a very common email you send out. Okay, cool. So that's all contact info, more information about Git commands and stuff like this. So we'll talk about this today, or at least parts of this today, just because I want to make sure you guys know how to use Git, even though it's on section 2 when it goes into more detail. All right, cool. So that's just the home page. Any questions at all?
Yeah, I kind of have a question. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is the right time, but basically I've been trying to get just kind of like learn programs to run in the terminal, and they're not running. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I skipped a step somewhere where I'm supposed to install learn. So when I hit learn, that program runs. So
right.
Mm-hmm. So where is that?
Yeah, so this is actually something I wanted to kind of address too when we get into the curriculum part. But I think you're talking about the what's it called, the learn environment. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So I'm basically doing the first lab, mm-hmm. but even if I was to do the first step of the first lab and say open the lab, that doesn't work yet.
It's this one right here, right? Setting up professional.
Yeah. So like there's to the right side, there's like, oh, now it says mm-hmm. opened this lab. Like I did open it.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
All right. So I'm going to tell you guys a quick secret. Ignore this. I ignore this open lab run local test. It is something that was included at one point, and I think it just hasn't been updated for that. This is something kind of like pulling back the curtain a little bit. We're constantly updating the curriculum at Flatiron, trying to figure out things that work. And sometimes we get these weird nuances and stuff like this. So I know some people have had luck with this, depending on your settings. To be honest, you don't have to worry too much about this. I think these are literally the only 2 labs, but this one and the next one, that have this, but you can ignore it for now. I'm trying to work out a, what's it called? A workaround so you can at least mark it off. But the important part is just going, at least for these 2 labs, is to go through this, follow the instructions for installing Git, all these parts. This is not the necessary.
So that means that I can probably go ahead and disable the Learn Code package, the Learn ID package from Atom.
Right. Yeah. You don't necessarily have to do that. I think you guys might have used it for the boot camp, or not boot camp, boot camp prep.
No, right? No. I mean, when you go and you hit the Learn Code, right? Mm-hmm. You obviously need to have the ID loaded. So mm-hmm. I had Atom already. So mm-hmm. I went ahead and installed the Learn ID module. Try mm-hmm. to use it, but I'm not only myself, but several people are getting the same error, which is basically a Ruby error, where it mm-hmm. thinks that a Python there's a method called an object called Python trying to use an ampersand as a method. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah.
So that's what's killing everybody, basically.
Yeah, and this is something that I know is kind of confusing because I think this is something, to be quite honest, it was something that software engineering uses, but as data scientists, we're not going to be using that. We typically aren't going to be using Atom. We're instead almost like nearly exclusively going to be using Jupyter Notebook to do all our code and stuff like that. And that's where this is where they're talking about in this lesson. If like besides this open lab stuff, talking about just all this material in like directions on how to install this part. This is the stuff you want to do. Having Jupyter Notebook running, that's the guy you want to have. And that's where you're going to do pretty much all of your work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it just sucks. I want to say I've completed the lesson.
I know. I totally understand. And you're not the first person to say the same thing. That's why I'm looking to see, okay, can we mark this off? So that way, at least you guys, those people who feel a little obsessive compulsive, just want to get that marked off. And I totally understand too.
That was me trying to troubleshoot it, reading up as much Ruby as I could to try to.
Yeah. So this is where, if you guys come across issues like this, definitely message out. And the people who had there's people who messaged me directly too. this is where I say like always share like, you know, on that main cohort channel. Cause then if you guys have like you guys just talked about, like everyone's having the same issues kind of deal. And my suggestion is just ignore it for right now. Just basically just follow the directions. And that's really the important part for these two little labs, setting a professional data science environment.
If I could add a comment, I wasn't sure if someone was going to be able to solve this, but even in my last cohort with Raphael on the full time, I think we spent like maybe 1 hour thinking about it, and then he said just like skip over it, like don't worry about it, because nobody was able to make this look complete or like to you know, trigger it to think it's been complete. So we just skipped over it, and essentially it's as long as we can get the learn environment to work and open up Jupyter, that's all that mattered later on. But yeah, nobody's been able to like get this thing to trigger, like, you know, everything's been checked off.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's something that I need to talk with the curriculum writers on this part. Is that they probably need to update on the back end. I'm saying, hey, ignore this stuff. So unfortunately, you guys got in the crosshairs of that transition and stuff like that. But yeah, it's not just me, right? Raphael, another instructor, said, yeah, skip over this because it's not important. The important part is doing the actual steps in here. Okay, does that make sense here? Cool. But thank you, Stephen and Alvaro, for bringing that up, because I think it is something that people in general, so I'm glad we kind of referenced it. But cool. Awesome. So besides that, though, it's not too bad to work through all these parts and everything like that. The most thing is just follow instructions and things like that. Let's see, I just want to make sure I mark off all my stuff. So I'm going to come back to this a little bit in a second, but I did want to mention a little bit about how to find study groups and stuff. I think for the most part, you guys understand, but I'm going to go ahead and just point this out. So if you're on LearnCo, the homepage, or just you're working on this material, you can just go ahead and click study groups. And that will show you not just your study groups of that, you know, for your cohort, it'll also show you study groups for other cohorts as well. And you're welcome to join other cohorts study groups. In fact, you can create as a student, you can actually create your own study group as well and host that and have people come, you know, for example, I've had students in the past create study sessions, you know, where they want to just, you know, especially being remote, they just want to just have, you know, hang out a little bit, talk and all that stuff. If you guys ever need like a Zoom link, I know you guys can create a Zoom link. I think it's limited to 40 minutes if you are not a pro user or something like that. So if you guys ever want to have something like, let's say you guys are like, yeah, you know, on the weekends, sometimes you just want to get together and like talk or something like that. I can give you guys a Zoom link that can basically, you know, last over, you know, 40 minutes and stuff like that, can last indefinitely. So just let me know if you guys ever need help with this. But yeah, you're welcome to create these study groups. You guys are welcome to attend other study groups. You can see here we have a couple of study groups, probably not the sections you guys are on right now, but you know, things from Avenid, Eli, Raphael. So yeah, this is what I was talking about. Dr. Pablo's Crespo. But anyway, you can join these study groups and attend them. Just of course, be courteous and stuff, just like you are here. So yeah. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone on how to do this? Cool. Awesome. And usually the Zoom link will actually be on this study group. So note that for our study group, like for example, this is a different cohort. This is not you guys. But just kind of like if you want to ever like message the person who's hosting it, so in this case, I'm hosting it, you can always message them, hey, you know, like, is there something I need to know? I would like to attend. It's just a nice courteous thing, but just know you're free to join in. Okay, cool. Awesome. So the next part I want to show is a blog. So I'm going to go through this very quickly because, to be quite honest, I mentioned this in the orientation, is I've had a lot of students instead do medium.com. And I think for data science, it makes a lot of sense to do your blog on medium.com because that's where a lot of data scientists will be writing stuff and stuff like that. So note that you can basically write a blog directly on here on learn.co. If you have your own professional website, you know, like if you have your own personal website and you want to use that as your blogging platform, cool, go do that too. Or that, you know. But I would say is that, you know, people have different feelings about Medium. I know there's at least one instructor who's not a big fan of medium.com, but I do find a lot of students enjoy that. You guys know medium.com? You guys know I'm talking about? Give me a thumbs up. Cool. So one thing with Medium, if you do write it, because the reason why you're writing these blog posts, to be quite honest, is not just to show that you know your knowledge, but really to have an online presence. And this is where one of those things, like I personally get a little like, feel a little cringy when I say like, you know, your personal brand and like online presence and stuff like that. It's just not something I'm really big on, but it is a really helpful thing that's going to help you over these next 10 months, where at the end of those 10 months, not only have you learned a lot of information, but you have evidence of that, and people can go essentially Google your name and they know that you exist and that you've been doing things for these past 10 months. So that's where the big part of that blog post is. And medium.com in particular gets a lot of traffic going through there. Other data scientists, other people who are learning to data science will tend to go through these kind of platforms too, because there's a lot of information. Also, I've had students in the past where they'll write something and maybe, I don't know if I get the right term for this, but like a publisher for medium.com will like sponsor their post or something, like basically, oh, we would like to host your, again, I'm not an expert on this, but like host your post in medium.com under our like publishing group or whatever it's called, which is pretty cool because then they get more exposure too, and their thing sticks out a lot more. So something to kind of look forward to. Of course, you don't have to use Medium. You could use other platforms. But the important part is that you do this, you'll be doing this for your project as well as 2 additional ones besides your projects. So one, I think the very first one is talk about why did you decide to learn data science? You can talk about that right now. But of course, you can do other blog posts as well. And there's some suggested topics. Okay, cool. Any questions on this blogging? Okay, cool. If there's, in the future, if there are more questions, just, let me know and I'll go over it more. All right, so I think that is all I really wanted to go for this on Learn homepage. So I'm going to show in a second here. We're going to kind of skip around a little bit and like what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and open up one of these lessons. So you can see you're getting started with data science introduction, right? And one thing, I think this is not a lab that we're actually going to complete. So I'm going to take a while, but here we go. So one thing that if you've already been doing this, you'll probably realize this really quickly, is that if you start doing, you can actually type on here and do the work directly on Learn. I'm gonna say don't do that. Don't make a good practice of that, because Learn doesn't save your information and it refreshes and stuff. And plus, to be quite honest, as a data scientist, you're not gonna be using learn.co to do your work. You're gonna be using Jupyter Notebook or something like that. So what you really wanna do is essentially take this, we're gonna talk about cloning it, and working on it on your own computer. And that way you can make sure it works for you and everything like that. But you can technically, if you want to see this, for example, you can go ahead and write directly on here. So let's say print 1. I'm just making sure this will fail. And then I can go ahead and run this, and you can see it actually runs and everything like that. However, if you notice, if I refresh the page, or if the page just randomly refreshes because it timed out or something like that, you'll see it has to load in the kernel. It takes more time too. So you'll see that my information is all gone, all that stuff I just wrote. So don't spend like a whole hour on this lab and then it's going to refresh and lose all your information. So I'm going to show you next about like what to do, like how do you do this whole process. Okay.